shorty, everyone. Welcome to These Guys Got Next. It's episode 9. My name's Elijah Farfew. He's Ravindu Pathirana. As always, it's our basketball podcast where we deliver our hot takes and analysis off the bench. And as always, we like to do our usual quick check-in. Ravi, how are you? How's everything on your end?
Yeah, sensational, mate. Looking forward to NBA Cup started. It's looking awesome. How about you?
I would say the NBA season started off well, except there's a whole lot of injuries that have gone on, which has sort of spoiled, I guess, the start of the season. And I think we should start straight ahead with that. All these stars who've been out to begin the season: Kevin Durant, Zion Williamson, Ja Morant, Paolo Banchero, Tyrese Maxey, DeJounte Murray, Chet Holmgren, Scotty Barnes, CJ McCollum, Aaron Gordon. The list goes on, and then there's a few other stars who haven't even stepped out on court yet. What do you sort of make of all these injuries? Is this just a terrible coincidence? Is this a run of bad luck?
I think these guys have faced a lot of injuries. Some of them due to overuse. Some of them due to, I guess, soft tissue injuries caused by like acute trauma. Right. I'm going to sound a bit medical here, but yeah, it's just those weird bumps and like awkward knocks or awkward falls that happen, and your body twists. It is basketball. It is a sport. At the end of the day, there's collisions which we can't control. But yeah, this is unprecedented in terms of the number of injuries that we are facing. A couple of things to take into consideration, like you mentioned, are they just wear and tear injuries? Are they unlucky ones? Like, when you look at KD's calf strain, I think that comes down to overuse because he had that niggle in the Paris Olympics earlier in the year. Zion has had a history of injury. Jimmy Butler has. Kawhi, we know, hasn't touched a court. As we spoke about Tyrese Maxey last episode, he was overused because he played the most minutes. I think there's a few of those guys are quite unlucky. Ja, mid-air knock. Chet, fractured hip. Like an old man with a fractured hip. Scotty Barnes, orbital fracture. I know, I loved watching D-Rose highlights. I know I started watching the NBA after his, decline of the big injury. But there was I believe it's a sports science video where it compared Russell Westbrook's landing style to D Rose's landing style. Like, the reason I bring this up is Ja, we know, is a very exciting player, has flashes of D Rose and like the way he contorts his body to make these awesome layups and dunks. One thing that in that video that kind of highlighted is how when D Rose used to jump, he used to land on one leg first and then the second leg would follow, which means that initial landing leg absorbs a lot of the impact, which causes a lot of injury, which it did. Conversely, for Westbrook, his landings were more two-footed, which means that both the legs can absorb the impact. So maybe something for Ja to consider.
I love that medical report. I think you should be doing medical reports for the 76ers. I'll just say that. Look, I think the thing with all these injuries is that all these players, and some of them come under this category of star players, which is under the NBA player participation policy. We'll touch on that in depth a little bit later on. So guys who have made all-star teams in the past few years or have been in all NBA teams. So KD is on that list. Zion, Ja, Tyrese Maxey, they all qualify. So they're considered star players. All these star players are on pace to miss over 1,000 games this season, which is insane. And it's already had an impact on TV ratings. ESPN in the opening weeks, viewership was down 34% compared to this time last year. On TNT, it's down 14%. Like, I guess from a personal view, I was at work watching the Thunder and Pelicans game, and the Pelicans have 6 guys who are out. Jose Alvarado is the latest to join the injury list. Trey Murphy's just come back, but they're already missing 6 guys. So I guess as a fan, it's real disheartening to see all these star players and all these players in general, up and comers, who are missing time because of these injuries. And I guess I sort of want to actually, you know what? I know we have the shot clock. We're supposed to do this later on. I sort of want to use this time now because I have my concerns around this policy. I'm worried about the NBA player participation policy, this threshold of players playing 65 games per season. I think it's going to put so much pressure on some of these younger players to play through injury, all because of these incentives of earning NBA awards or earning higher money as part of their contracts. And I'll just stop the shot clock there. But I guess my concern, this whole player participation policy was brought in last season because of the load management. And the 2 players we think of when we hear load management are Joel Embiid and Kawhi Leonard. So this rule was brought in last season by Adam Silver to combat that. unfortunately, there's a whole group of younger up and coming players who, they can't dispute that injuries are a part of the game. Like, you can't dispute that as a high performance athlete. But I think when you take these hits, you take these bumps, and you think, well, I need to play at least 65 games if I'm going to qualify for the All NBA teams or qualify for MVP or DPOY. And the first guy I thought of immediately when all these injuries happened was Paolo Banchero, because I think he's someone who was on the verge of an All NBA season, and unfortunately he's still probably about a month or so away. Last season, Tyrese Halliburton faced a similar dilemma. I don't know if you remember, he had this hamstring injury at about January, second half of the season. He tried to come back early from it because of the 65 game threshold rule, and he injured it his first game back because he wanted to play with Pascal Siakam. He just got traded to the Pacers, wanted to share the court with him, and he pretty much said, he said on JJ Redick's podcast that he did it because at the back of his mind he was thinking about that whole incentive and earning that extra $40-50 million to be part of an All NBA team, and I think he ended up being on the third All NBA team. So that's sort of my concern with the policy. Yes, everyone has their opinions on it because of what Joel Embiid's done, and you can point the finger at whoever you want, whether it's Embiid or Kawhi. I know who you're pointing the finger at, Rav. So I mean, actually, I'll let you sort of discuss your view of this whole policy and load management and stuff.
Yeah, I guess yeah, like as the viewers will come to know, I've almost got personal beef with Joel Embiid because of, I guess, he's taking the Mickey out of these policies and not playing for
That's
the
why you
team
should
with
do the
everyone
medical
else.
reports. You got to keep him in line, keep him in check.
Yeah, get him across it. But yeah, we'll touch on Embiid shortly after. But I think the biggest thing in terms of the policy, it is a real tough one to juggle. You are, like you mentioned, as a high performance athlete, you are put under pressure to perform. You are going to get paid more. You're incentivized to play more. You're incentivized to perform, which means NBA as a product improves with more viewership, more merchandise purchases, etc., etc. So there's that whole business side of it behind it as well. But like as we touched about, all these injuries coming into play, it is a real hard one to juggle. But if you're genuine about the injury, I understand. There's no point in terms of rushing your rehab because personally played sport in the past, rushed through injuries, wanting to get back out on the field doesn't help in the long term. So again, you play for the love of the game. So there's a big difference there. However, love of the game and when you get paid for it kind of blurs a line when money is involved. But I think, yeah, if like Tyrese Halliburton, like seemed like from what he was speaking about, wanted to be on the court and sharing the court with a great player as Pascal Siakam, hence why he rushed it. On the flip side, we got a guy like Joel Embiid, which yeah, I've got so much to say about him, which kind of segues into I guess the game of the week, which was Embiid's return. I watching that game, it really annoyed me and angered me just to see MVP, All Star caliber player, All NBA player just not putting enough effort. Well, that's one of the first things I noticed. Like it was lethargic, it was sluggish. Yeah, it was just really frustrating to see because Drummond got subbed in, and Drummond just comes in high energy. Boom! I'm gonna be actively rebounding. I'm gonna be, I guess, in the play more. Like there was a play in the second quarter. I think it was Jared McCain that dribbled up the ball. MB just set this lethargic screen on the left hand side of the court, and he just watched the play, allowing Embiid's man to kind of trail Mick the hoop. He could have gone to the corner, opened up. We know he's a great 3-point shooter. But again, I could go on and on about this, but it was not a good showing. And there was questions asked, at the end of the game where he was asked by a media report, "Are you ready to play? Are you healthy?" And he said he wants to play, but the decision's not up to him. And the question goes, why not? Aren't you the one wanting to play? Aren't you the one wanting to say you're a great player? Like that's my question for him. And Nick Nurse, on the other hand, it's like, oh, his conditioning's not up to standard. He's rusty. Okay, go play some pickup basketball. Just get involved actively in training. Go for a run. Go for a bike, swim. There's so many different options. I feel like he's just making excuses, man. Like for a guy that talented, it is such a shame to see him go to waste.
I hate for Embiid's sake that this is the narrative around him as a player, because we talk about the thing about injuries is that it creates this narrative of what ifs. I think Zion, he'll be one of the biggest what ifs in NBA history, because I think he could be up there as one of the greats if he was never getting injured. And I think the same goes for Embiid. Personally, I watched part of the game. I honestly wasn't surprised that Embiid played the way he did, just because one, it's his first game back, and like if you're expecting him to come out and pull 30 and 15, I think you're sort of dreaming a little bit. But I think he's some of the things of Paul George when he came back. He was slowly ramping things up, and I think that game against the Knicks, he actually played well in that contest. So I think it's the same thing with Embiid. Obviously, the obstacle is him not playing back to backs. I think if he played back to backs, him ramping things up again would be a lot easier. But because he's not, that's going to make things. It's going to be such a stop-start season for Joel. So
Yeah, I'm just on that
yeah,
as well. By no means am I expecting 30 and 15. All I'm saying is put a bit of effort in. Show your teammates you
yeah,
care, and you're gonna hustle a little bit. That's all it is. It doesn't have to reflect in the box score. Just the intangibles, and that goes a long way.
yeah, for sure. And I think one guy who has been showing a bit of effort this week on the 76ers is Jared McCain, their rookie first round pick, 16th overall in the first round of the draft. A few big games this week. He had scores of 23, 27, and 18. He also had his best performance as a rookie, 34 points, 10 assists, which included 6 threes against the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's the highest rookie points total this season, one more than Zachary Risachet, who posted his 33 points last week. He's the only person, along with Jason Kidd and Steph Curry, to hit those totals in a game in their rookie seasons, which is not bad company to be alongside. I guess for you, Rav, considering the week he's had and the performance he just had against the Cavs, where does he sort of sit among Rookie of the Year contenders, considering how weak of a draft class we know this is?
A couple of things taken into consideration. Like we know NBA is all about situations. If you put a player in a particular situation, they'll thrive. We've seen lots of cases of this. I think something to take into account is the fact that Tyrese Maxey's injury is allowing him the spotlight. Before Tyrese was injured, Kane was averaging 12.6 minutes a game, with the most he played was 22. And over the stretch of the last 4 or 5 games, he's playing over 30 minutes. And I'll be honest, he looks awesome, looks really good. Like the mid range is working really well for him. He finds easy shots. One of the best things that kind of stood out to me like watching that game is, he had the game of 18, 23, then 27. Or apologies if I got the order wrong. Then he went 34 and 10. The best part was not necessarily the scoring, which was awesome, but also the fact that he got other people involved in the game. That shows a level of maturity from Jared McCain and being able to take on the load, especially when like the star players are away. But in terms of Rookie of the Year, I don't think this is sustainable. Just depending on how well he gels with Tyrese Maxey, I think Zach Edey is still my front runner, and I'm going to back him.
I still think it puts him top 3 at least, just because, again, like we know this isn't the greatest draft class in the world, so it doesn't take a lot to put yourself in that conversation. And like you mentioned, it's not like, he had a choice in terms of the minutes he's getting. Like his development sort of had to be accelerated because of the Maxey injury and the fact that Kyle Lowry and Reggie Jackson aren't stepping up as the veterans that they're supposed to be. So McCain is definitely making the most of this opportunity, and I think as long as Maxey is sidelined, then there's some good things that lie ahead for Jared McCain. Just want to quickly, this is our brief mention of the Cleveland Cavaliers, 13-0 as of recording. Will they catch the 24-0 Warriors team of 2015 and 16? Who knows? They've got a big game coming up this week, which we'll touch on later on. But there's your Cleveland Cavaliers mention of the week. We know the reasons behind why they've had such a strong start. We've talked about it in the past, so probably no point in repeating ourselves. One game I do want to bring up is the Miami Heat, Detroit Pistons game, particularly at the end there with Eric Spoelstra, one of the greatest coaches in the league, making a very rare mistake. Did you catch the game, rather? Did you sort of see what Eric Spoelstra was sort of thinking in that moment?
That was, yeah, like you said, like one of the greatest minds in the game, and seeing such a simple mistake. At the end of the day, shows we are only human. But yeah, very, very interesting to see. And it's amazing how the Pistons both had back-to-back games with similar endings, or could have been very similar endings. Yeah, but what do you make out of it?
The funniest part to me was Jalen Rose was on the sideline, former NBA player, and when you think about great moments of players or coaches calling a phantom timeout, or a timeout that doesn't exist, you think of Chris Webber. So for college basketball fans, Chris Webber and Jalen Rose played at Michigan together. They were part of the Fab Five, of that incredible group of freshmen. Unfortunately, during their Final Four game against North Carolina, Webber, who was the best player on that team, got the ball and he called a timeout that didn't exist. And Jalen Rose was on the sideline. His reaction to the Spoelstra mistake was like, there were so many memes. And this is what I love about social media and the world we live in, is that people can just come up with things so quickly. So everyone was saying, "Oh, Rose is having PTSD," or "He's seen the ghost of Chris Webber through Eric Spoelstra." And I just thought that was so funny, and that Jalen Rose was there for that moment. But yeah, a rare mistake there for Spoelstra. But I guess on the Miami Heat, the one player I've been impressed with is Tyler Hero. We were talking about Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo before the season about who needed to step up. I think we also brought up Tyler Hero, but to see Hero take the reins and take the control of this team, yeah, I think it's been a great start for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, wasn't expected. Like, both of us expected Bam to take that next step, especially in light of Jimmy's age and injuries. Hero's been, I guess, coming in fluctuations in terms of his performance over the last few seasons. But yeah, I'm really liking the fact that he's having this consistency and being the top scorer for the team at 24.9 and having that, I guess, historic game that he had with 40 points with 10 threes. 6 threes in the fourth, like that's awesome. We know he can catch fire. Like him and Duncan Robinson that one season was just unreal. But yeah, I just hoping again consistency, right? We just got to make sure that he keeps performing at a high level, and going to be really interesting to see how Jimmy fits in the space while he's able to contribute.
I think it's a message to Jimmy Butler that it's not his team anymore. I think it's Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo's team. And Bam's had a slow start to the season, but he's slowly picking things up again. But Tyler Hero has pretty much saved Miami's start the season. Otherwise, we'd be talking about Miami in the same breath as the Bucks and the Sixers. So shout out to Tyler Hero. I think what I like about Tyler Hero this season is his game's becoming more well-rounded. He had those 40 points against the Pistons. He also added 8 assists, 5 rebounds, and 4 steals. So he's definitely putting in the work there in terms of his playmaking and his defense. The other thing I want to bring up is he's attempting 9.6 threes, which is fourth in the NBA in 3-point percentage among those taking at least 5 attempts from deep. And that's behind Kyrie Irving, Norman Powell, and AJ Green. And I want to shout out AJ Green. If you don't know who he is, he plays for the Milwaukee Bucks, who, as much as they've struggled, they've got this guy AJ Green who literally does not take twos. All he does is shoot threes. If you check out his shot chart, if you get a chance, it's literally all taken outside beyond the 3-point line, which is insane. He's taken 52 3-point attempts this season, which is the most in NBA history without taking a 2-point shot. Like, he's literally just a flamethrower. That's literally his job. So
green light from 3, man. It's in the last
exactly. If you get paid, exactly, green light from 3. If you get paid just to shoot threes, then that is a hell of a job. So good on you, AJ Green. Let's move over to Atlanta. Dyson Daniels has been an absolute standout, particularly on the defensive end. What have you sort of made? Because I feel like when Atlanta traded for DeJounte Murray back in the day, and they were hoping that he would be this great defensive complement alongside Trae Young, but I feel like Dyson has become what DeJounte was supposed to be on the defensive end. What have you sort of noticed from Dyson this season?
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree. This is what DeJounte should have been. But one thing I really like about Dyson Daniels is he's got very active hands. He leads the league in deflections. And he's very good at anticipating as well. There was I believe it was the Celtics. He had 2 steals in one play. Well, a deflection and a steal. Like that's just it's so good to see. Like during that Celtics game, he is actively, I guess, watching the play, watching the ball, but also being in a good position to monitor his man, and he just gets himself in really good positions to make those steals. Yeah, how are you kind of gauging him at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it right there with his active hands. He's just been disruptive, and I think it's insane. Like, it's historic, the start he's had. 76 deflections in his first 10 games, which is the most since the stat was tracked. Nikola Jokic and Alex Caruso are tied for second. Do you want to guess how many they have?
I'm going to guess somewhere in the 40s.
Yeah, you're not far off. It's 44, which is insane. Like, Dyson Daniels has 32 more deflections than Jokic and Caruso. And he's also had 19 steals in a 3-game span. He's the 4th player in NBA history to have 3 straight games with 6+ steals. He leads the NBA in steals with 3.6. Now, I don't know if 3.6 is sustainable for the rest of the year, but that is an insane start. I think we want to talk about how he fits in alongside Trae and whether he fits in with this young core of Risa Shea and Jalen Johnson. I guess for you, Rav, quickly, because I've got an answer to this as well, but where do you sort of see this core and where Trae fits in particular?
I guess it's a direction that the Hawks need to make in terms of do we keep building around Trey? We know what he brings to the table offensively, generational talent. However, defensively there's a big lack there. So is it do we plug in Dyson Daniels as a gap defensively at the point guard position and rely on guys like Jalen Johnson and also the development of Ricochet? What do you think?
I think because they're in sort of no man's land this season, they can't really make a move this season. Next season, I'd say this. I think this season, next season, I don't think they can really look to move Trey. They still need Trey offensively as the playmaker, or someone who's going to set the table. Yes, he can't defend to save his life, but he's got guys around him who can, which I think sort of saves Trey Young and takes the pressure off him in that regard. It allows him to focus on the offensive end. So I think right now the Hawks should be set with their core. Maybe in a few years' time, you sort of start to look at where things are at. But I think right now, I don't think it's a priority as such to sort of look to move away from or move on from Trey Young. Another game this week, the Bucks and the Pistons. You mentioned it earlier, Rav. The end to that regulation, Giannis was called for a foul with less than 1 second, which in those instances are rarely called. Like they don't really call anything in less than 5-10 seconds on the clock. I guess what was your take on that whole situation? And I guess it helped in a way because Giannis ended up going off with 59.
Yeah, I mean, awesome for Giannis. Carried a massive load, and I'm glad that Splash Mountain came through that game as well to support him. Just got to give a quick shout out. Yeah, it was interesting because like you mentioned, the refs want to see guys play and compete in those last few seconds. But that was really interesting. I personally didn't think that was a foul. I thought Giannis got all ball in that situation, but I guess that's what they say, right? Ball don't lie. Ron Holland, young 19-year-old fella coming in to take those two free throws and bricks both of them, which is unfortunate. Would have definitely knocked his confidence. But I'm glad the Bucks got a win under their belt, and this means even just without Dame or Middleton or Portis as well. Now he's injured, so Giannis had to carry the load quite a bit this game, which isn't necessarily sustainable. I think he went down with like 2 minutes, a minute to go, clutching his right knee in one of the drives. So again, just got to be mindful of on the theme of injuries that we spoke about, the longevity of yourself.
I'll add this briefly. I think we talked about Jokic and his pathway to being an MVP. This is Giannis's path to. He's on a similar trajectory in terms of his pathway because he's going to have to carry this team who, outside of him and Dame, that's not looking surprising. They've got AJ Green, our new favorite shooter, Mr. Green Light there. The green, actually, yeah, we'll dub him the green light. But yeah, I think he was expected to carry the load the way the Bucks have started. He's carrying the load right now with that 59-point outburst, which is the highest tally this season. So we'll see how long he's able to keep that up and where he sort of sits among the MVP standings. We'll cross over to the Western Conference now. Big injury news for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Unfortunately, the news was announced just after we recorded last week, so we didn't get time to really touch on it. But Chet Holmgren out for 8 to 10 weeks with a hip injury. The injury, the actual landing looked pretty brutal when he went up to challenge Andrew Wiggins against the Warriors, but it sort of left them in, I wouldn't say dire straits because they've got a great defense regardless, great defensive players. But I guess in terms of that big man role, there's not much depth at that position.
And saying that, man, like Jalen Williams has, he's been pushed forward to be that center or guard the centers. He's doing really well, like putting up awesome numbers. He's averaging, since the injury anyway, averaging 37 and 7 on 60% from three. He's holding it down, which is awesome. And being that, I guess, Robin to Shea's Batman to show the depth of the OKC team and how worried the league should be for the next few years. But massive, massive loss again. Yeah, I think they put the lineup out after the injury. Shea was the tallest at the point position at 6'6". So there you go. That's it's an interesting set.
Yeah, not to forget that they've got another Jalen Williams on that squad who's an actual big man who's still yet to come back. They've got Hartenstein who's set to come back in hopefully a couple of weeks' time. I know Kenrich Williams just came back, so he's another option as a big, but he's not really a big. He's not really a center, rather. I'm interested to see how teams sort of look to exploit the short line with all those guards there, and whether teams will focus too much on that, which will allow OKC to sort of exploit teams because they're looking to exploit OKC without a big man. but they've got like even though they lack size, they're going to fight on every position. There's just so many dogs there on defense. So yeah, interesting to see how the Thunder will operate without Chet for the next wee while. Warriors and Mavs, what a game this week. Klay Thompson's return to the Bay. Shout out to Golden State first of all. I guess all those captains hats that they gave to the crowds, and 18,000 or so honoring Klay Thompson because he's such an avid boater. He loves his boats, so everyone was wearing these white captains hats, and they had all these employees line up to salute him when he arrived. I guess what did you sort of make on that contest, and I guess the back and forth between Steph and Klay during that contest was really what intrigued me.
Yeah, that was a very good game overall. Awesome to see those photos that come out post game with Klay in the foreground and all the crowd in the background with the captain's hat. So that was really awesome. But Steph, man, Steph is him. That guy, 36 years old, 10-0 run to close the game out, and the night came after. So well deserved. Put up 37, 6 and 9, and that was just unreal to see. Like Steph is. I'm really hoping that he's going to keep doing this for until the day he retires. Just go on these insane runs by himself. The cool part about that game, Steph had a good game. Dre looked good defensively. Had some like flashes of his old self. Klay had a good game, 22 points and 6 threes. Unfortunately, didn't come away with the win, but I feel like it was really fitting for that. I guess Klay's return. He had a good game in the Bay, and then Curry did Curry's thing. So I think that was good for the NBA.
Yeah, I think it worked out for all parties involved. Like Klay had his best game of the season, one of his best games, and the Warriors won. So everyone's happy at the end of the day, unless you're the Mavs, I guess. That back and forth between Steph and Klay was so funny because, after Steph nailed that first 3-pointer, he points at Klay a little bit, gestures to him. Then later on in the second quarter, Klay hits this little shoulder shimmy, mimicking Steph and stuff. And I'm sure at that point Steph was like, "Oh yeah, this is how it's going to be." So then the Splash Brothers, it turns into this sibling rivalry. Steph draws an and one on Klay and stares in his direction. He was like, which is one of the funniest reactions. And then obviously the way Steph was animated, like it wasn't just the night, it was him just saying like, "You're gonna stay here," that sort of thing. Like, and I'm not sure if this is true, but Draymond on his podcast said that apparently Klay had ghosted Steph. So apparently Steph was supposed to give a speech before the game sort of thing. But Draymond told him to lock in, like, focus on the game and stuff. So because of that, Steph decided not to do the speech. So he let whoever was in charge know. And I think he sent a message to Klay to sort of let him know and share some final messages. But Klay didn't respond. So that's sort of why Steph was animated the way he was. But I'd say, I guess for everyone involved, it was a great way to appreciate Klay Thompson, and that tribute video as well is a great emotional video to have of Klay there. So that was a great outing in that regards.
Yeah. Either way, yeah. Everyone won, right? Minus the Mavs. The Bay Boys won.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing we should bring up is that this Warriors bench is averaging 58 points per game, which is currently the most in NBA history. And I think the season record is 53.2 by the 2018-19 Clippers. So that would have been the Lou Will, Montrezl Harrell days. But you look at this Warriors bench, and we've talked about the depth in the squad. Buddy Hield is coming off the bench. Jonathan Kuminga's just moved there, so obviously that's going to hike up the scoring tally. Pajemski's coming off the bench as well. Like, they've got so many guys on that bench who can deliver day in, day out to help out Steph and Draymond. So that's sort of why the Warriors are where they at the moment. And finally, I guess to close off our analysis, Victor Wembanyama. I know Giannis had his 59-point game, but moments earlier, Wemby was actually the second player to hit the 50-point mark against the Washington Wizards, the fourth youngest in NBA history to score 50 behind Brandon Jennings, LeBron James, and Devin Booker. Also added a career-high 8 threes. I guess what have you sort of made to his start to the season? Because I feel like he's had his sort of struggles, but in the past few games, he's really ramped things up, and it culminated with this 50-point game.
Yeah, I mean, like sophomore struggles, right? That's just what it is for a lot of the players we see. First 9 games shooting 21% from three, and over the last 3 games, 54%. My kind of question comes in terms of Wemby, like, his height, is he using it to his advantage as well as he could be? Like exploiting his advantage, 7'4", unreal wingspan, like great touch, great shooting touch. But Shaq kind of makes a point in terms of be dominant in the paint, be dominant inside.
Well, the only thing I'd say to that is it's easy for Shaq to say when you're one of the most formidable, larger than life presences. Like Wemby is not Shaq. Like he is not as big as Shaq, so he can't use his size. He's still slim, like he's still in his second year. He's still building muscle, so I don't think he's at a point in his career where he can do that. Yes, in terms of his height, maybe he should use that a bit more often, but he's showing that he's got the skill that can overcome that lack of strength or lack of base when it comes to being in the post. So yeah, that's not a concern for me right now. I think the fact that he's shooting well from three, he's making the most offensively on that end. But I think it's easy for Shaq to say those comments when you're that big.
Maybe in a couple of years when he puts a bit of muscle. We saw Giannis's transformation over a few years in the league, putting on that muscle. We'll see how that kind of translate. I guess we can wait and see. Something I do want to touch on is, like us being a couple of Clippers fans, we were expecting somewhat of a lob city almost with Wemby and Chris Paul. So I did some bit of stats around this. So Chris Paul has made 103 assists so season, and only 13 of them have been to Wemby. And of that 13, only 4 have been alley-oops or dunks. And the reason I say alley-oops or dunks is there was one alley-oop layup. That was really interesting to me because I was thinking, okay, fair enough, the 3-point, the pick and pops, you're going to hit those, but I just assumed there'd be more, I guess, plays where CP3 and Wemby would be involved together. He's assisted Sochan more than he has Wemby. That was quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I guess the only thing, it does make me miss Lob City when you bring up Lob City, because I've been scrolling on TikTok the last few days and I'm seeing all these reels of Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan throwing it down. And again, those were two really strong guys who were able to take the contact whenever Chris Paul was able to throw up a lob. And I don't know if Wemby is at that sort of level yet where he can embrace the contact as he's going up. Or maybe it's a situational thing as to why the lobs aren't as frequent. But yeah, I mean, still a long way to go. I guess in the second half of the season, we can see Wemby just dunking a whole heap on people, and we've got a Lob City 2.0 going on in San Antonio. Let's move on now to our final segment, as always, the Quickfire. And we've unpacked so much already today, but we're going to have a little fun with this Quickfire. So 60 seconds, 6 questions. Let's just dive right into it. Ravi, I'll let you ask the first question, so I'll count you in. So here we go. 3, 2, 1.
All right, the City Edition jerseys just got unveiled over the last week. What do you reckon is the best jersey alive?
The Raptors, that classic dinosaur. Is it a dinosaur? Doesn't matter. What's the worst? Yeah, okay. There's my IQ gone. Worst NBA City jersey.
I think it's the Nuggets. It looks it doesn't look great. Who has the worst NBA alternative court for the cup?
Washington Wizards, because that hand. Okay, yeah. We need to post a photo or something.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the best NBA Cup court?
I think Hornets has the best one. Yeah. What's your game of the week that you're looking forward to?
I am going to go Mavericks Nuggets on Saturday, in season tournament game. How about you?
I'm going Celtics and the Cavs because I'm hoping the Celtics can dethrone the Cavs.
Yeah, that's going to be a sick game. Yeah, we'll round things off there. So, as always, Ralph, thank you so much for joining me this week. And thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok, or watch us or listen to us on Spotify and YouTube. But until then, we got next and Matiwa.